it's a quote from a mob movie.
Because if you don't do that, once you're in court, now you can't leave.
Katie's Snapchat picture, I've been saying that there was somebody in the background here wearing red shorts. Carter, who trains in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And by Warren's own admission, his brother put someone in an armbar. Pretty unique bracelet. Unique like the bracelet that Bart Jr. was wearing in that tattoo picture. And right here looks like it might be the tail end of a tattoo that wraps around the forearm.
When a boat starts sinking 10 miles out in the ocean, people do not stay still. On a 22-foot Triton with a broken pump and waves pouring in, staying calm is simply not an option. People rush around. They try to scoop out water. They drop flat to hunt for holes, to grab vests, or to pray. A vessel going under creates absolute panic. But based on the official version told by the friends of Nolan Wells, none of that ever took place. They claimed the water was rushing inside, yet they insisted nobody fell to the floor, nobody panicked, and nobody rushed across the deck. That story goes against common sense, and it goes against the distress call video itself. When online sleuths slow down the recording second by second, that story falls apart. A leg or arm shoots up from the floorboards the moment the tow rope pulls tight. A person is lying flat beneath the view of the lens. Meanwhile, the boys talking to the cameras freeze up completely, staring sideways at someone off camera, as if asking if they are allowed to talk. You are watching The Black Docket. We track open investigations, we examine real proof, and we never back down when the digital clues point to dishonesty. Today, we turn our focus to the independent internet sleuths who spent 6 weeks doing the exact work the Jackson County Sheriff's Office avoided. Sharpening the images, tracing the wristbands, mapping out the boats, and testing the official timeline against reality. If you are new to the channel, make sure to subscribe and drop your location in the comments. Now, let us examine the footage. Before we look closely at the images, we must lay out the facts, because a simple pair of red trunks means nothing until you see what they are attempting to hide. Nolan Wells was 18 years old. He played wide receiver for Southwest Mississippi Community College, and he was 3 weeks away from turning 19. He did not have a car, so his friends picked him up each day through simple trust. On July 4th, he joined those friends on a boat and headed 10 miles to Horn Island to spend the holiday. It was a normal summer trip for an 18-year-old on the Mississippi coast. He never returned. For 6 weeks, everyone was given a very neat, strictly controlled story. We were told the boat had mechanical trouble. We were told Nolan decided to stay behind on the sand to chat with Katie. We were told his friends drove away from the beach at 4:30 p.m., thinking he was fine, only to claim hours later that they did not know where he went. This story came directly from the boys, who sat next to an expensive lawyer who quoted mob films, made threats towards the public, and grinned at the lens. This story came from a sheriff's department that claimed no crime occurred before the autopsy was even done. This story came from officials who handed a broken mother a closed file marked with 2 words, undetermined. Yet while attorneys were making threats on television, another group of people was working quietly behind the scenes. Everyday researchers with no badges, no legal power, and no media teams were saving the source clips. They were brightening dark images. They were studying who sat on which boat. They were matching up wristbands worn in the background. They were doing the real work of uncovering the truth. What they spotted in those pictures shatters the official story completely. They spotted a person on the deck of a sinking vessel. They spotted a fighter in red trunks on the wrong beach. They spotted a matching bracelet on someone else's arm. And they spotted a brother named Brooks steering a boat that belonged to someone else. We are going to walk through these 5 major clues right now. we will show you what the researchers discovered frame by frame, and afterward we will compare these images to the actual facts of the case to ask the hard questions that the 90-minute broadcast skipped entirely. Stay close because the footage speaks for itself.
I mean, he's on the phone. Wouldn't you think that you would have seen Nolan on the bottom of on the floor or something? Or scrambling around, or everybody in a small space on the boat looking at him or something. I mean,
What an absolute wild thing to say when so many people have seen this video and slowed it down and noticed that there's either like a hand or a foot or something that comes flying up when they tug on the toe right there. Like, I can't believe that they said that. But please, please, please put out this interview. Please give me something to tear apart. Y'all, I swear I see Warren stop breathing when he starts this sentence, and he doesn't move again until he closes it out. Watch. They try to cover it up with an edit.
on the phone, wouldn't you think that you would have seen Nolan on the bottom of on the floor or something? Or scrambling around, or everybody in a small space on the boat looking at him or something. I mean,
Let's go through a speed run of the information. We can now definitively say that this is Jax. We can also now definitively say that this is Morgan. He's wearing the same hat as well as the same bracelets. So where were they on the Triton? Now that we've got a much clearer video thanks to Officer Tatum, it's obvious that there is nobody in an orange swimsuit or a paisley swimsuit on this boat. We also barely see that there's somebody here in the red shorts. Now, in this Katie Snapchat picture, I've been saying that there was somebody in the background here wearing red shorts. So I pumped up the exposure, and as you can see, it certainly looks like it. They seemingly have similar body types as well as similar hairlines. We also know that whoever was in the red shorts was also on the shoreline when the fight broke out. Now, who was involved in that fight? Warren's brother, Carter. Carter, who trains in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And by Warren's own admission, his brother put someone in an armbar. And in case you don't know what that looks like, go ahead and look at that placement on the back of the head there. Spot look familiar? Given Carter's height, build, body type, this looks like it could be him. But one blurry, underexposed picture is not solid proof of anything, right? But we know Warren grabbed his younger brother and had him come over hang out with them on their boat as they were sinking or whatever. And it would be pretty bad for their case if this was Carter on the Triton and then on Katie's boat at 6 o'clock. But now my attention turns to this person who a lot of people think is Bart. But in his hand, he is holding a cell phone. So I thought, why would Bart jump from his boat to the other boat holding a cell phone when other people have cell phones in their hands while Wyatt is on the phone in the picture? So while I was trying to compare pictures of Bart to the person on the boat that I can't identify, I found this picture with him with a tattoo from about 2 years ago. And it wasn't until just today that I stopped looking at the tattoo and I started looking at his wrist. Because someone in the background of this picture has always stuck out to me because my instinct always was like, is that Bart? Bart seemingly has a pretty pronounced mullet as according to this picture. But this was definitely not on Bart's boat. I checked the seating and the covers, like it's not Bart's boat. Now I think you pretty much get where I'm going with this because then I remembered this bracelet. Pretty unique bracelet. Unique like the bracelet that Bart Jr. was wearing in that tattoo picture. And right here looks like it might be the tail end of a tattoo that wraps around the forearm, right in the same place that it would be on Bart. I've said for a while now that the story about them calling Bart that morning to go out on the boat never made sense, because what 21-year-old didn't already have plans for 4th of July? So then the question is, who is driving Bart's boat? Which brings me back to this guy who some people have thought looked like Bart. However, we do know that he was on Bart's boat handing out drinks to people in that 7-second clip we've seen. Same hair, same glasses, same hat. By the way, did y'all know that Bart has a younger brother? The family resemblance is very striking. I mean, the real difference is that he's a little bit shorter and has a squarer jaw. And does anybody want to guess what his younger brother's name is? Brooks. Now, I seem to remember, and I can't remember exactly the context, a certain somebody talking in an interview about his buddy Brooks. Here's your reminder to check out my bio if you want to support my work. Folks, I have really outdone myself because I'm sure you're here wanting my take on part 2 of the interview, but we're not going to talk about that. Trust me, you're gonna wanna be sad. Thanks to this interview, I was able to finally, definitively put faces and names together, and then it hit me. We now know for sure that this is Jax, and now we know for sure that this is Morgan. He's literally wearing the same hat and the exact same armbands. So why aren't they on the Triton? A very unique blue swimsuit and an orange and yellow swimsuit. And now, thanks to Officer Tatum, we finally have a very clear video of them calling for the sea tow, and I don't see an orange swimsuit anywhere. I don't see a paisley swimsuit anywhere. So where are Jax and Morgan on this boat? We see what looks like Jax cuddling up to Katie on Bart's boat. So is this Bart over on their boat? Because here he was in that video handing out beers from his boat, and the sunglasses and the hat look the same. But what if it's not? Just stick with me, I'm going to come back around to it. Because now I want to talk about Warren's 17-year-old brother, Carter. Carter, who we know got into a fight with someone and put someone in an armbar on the shore. Carter, who Warren said he told to come over and hang out with all of them and chill out. Carter, who practices Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Notice the hand placement. And if you're like me, I had to go look up and see what an armbar exactly is and how it is done. And oh, look at the placement of that arm. Yeah. Now this seems to me like it definitely could be Carter. Picture was just taken in December, so the haircut, the hairline, the body type, all of it. We also know that the person in the red shorts were on the shore when the fight happened. Now y'all remember this picture, the Katie Snapchat pictures? Well, I brightened it up. All I did was just pump up the exposure, nothing else, and look in the background here. Oh, red shorts, just like I said. Lighter colored hair with a very familiar looking back of the neck. Now, of course, I'm not saying whether this is or isn't Carter. Boy, this wouldn't look good for anybody if this is Carter on Katie's boat at 6:02. But you know, one underexposed, blurry picture a smoking gun does not make. Unless somebody with a very unique haircut and a very distinct piece of jewelry happens to show up in one of these pictures. Because Mullet Boy here has always bothered me because for some reason he's wearing what looks like jeans. Not saying they are jeans, just can't definitively prove one way or the other whether they are or not, or if it's just the design of the swim trunks. When I went back through some of the photos I had collected of Bart Jr. to try and figure out if this was him or not, I found this picture I had archived. Thanks to the tattoo in this picture, which is the reason I screen grabbed it, that's why I'm like, I don't think this is Bart, because I feel like I would see the tattoo there, but and mind you, this picture is a couple of years old, but I just kind of wanted a timeline for this tattoo for identification purposes. And then I stopped getting distracted by the tattoo on his arm, and I looked at the bracelet on his wrist. Pretty unique set of bracelets, right? I mean, hopefully by now you've figured out where I'm going with this. Why, what a unique set of bracelets. So between the mullet and these bracelets, someone may come to the conclusion that Katie and Bart were on a boat together. Maybe not Bart's boat, because after all, they're claiming that this boat belonged to a Marty McGrath, who's the one who came and got people. But if that's Bart here, then who was driving Bart's boat? Did you guys know that Bart has a younger brother? Very similar looking, but I'll tell you what, very different jawlines. Almost like the jawline of this person on the Triton. And guess what his brother's name is? Brooks. Now, where have I heard that before? Hasn't somebody talked about my buddy Brooks in previous interviews? I always said the whole we called Bart that morning story didn't make fucking sense. I have a theory that I'm flushing out. But thanks for doing this interview, guys. Wouldn't have been able to figure this out without you. But you know, since we're all liars and grifters anyway, just a reminder to everybody to check out my link in my bio if you want to support my work. I told you that lawyer was giving away the game when he kept saying just their 3 names over and over again. What do you mean it's a quote from a mob movie?
Because if you don't do that, once you're in court, now you just can't leave. Now you just can't leave.
Maybe if you're trying to convince the general public that these boys are innocent, Don't quote a mob movie in which they then beat up a bunch of bikers at a bar. And it seems quite obvious to me that this lawyer, instead of, presenting evidence that would help exonerate them in the public eye, like showing the actual security cam footage of when they came home or the text messages with Katie. No. Instead, we're going to keep it focused on race, which you can see by this clip.
People are pushing the narrative of, oh, this is a race thing. Well, obviously it's not. I mean, this is like a brother to us. I mean, Nolan's no different than anyone else in our group.
I also want to say, I think it's so criminal that they took something so anti-racist and flipped it into something super racist. Like this is the definition of anti-racism. I mean, that we did not look at Nolan any different than I looked at him, or even you.
Okay, first off, that even you was wild. It's quite clear from that sentence that Jax has never had an actual conversation about racism in his entire life. I was friends with a black person. That's the most anti-racist anybody's ever been. This situation was the most unracist thing that's ever existed. It's the media. They're the ones making this racist. No, you don't understand what that means. It means your story doesn't hold water, and when people called you out on it and called out the investigation on not even investigating, that is systematic racism. It's very, very clear to me that the lawyer is the one telling them to keep the focus on race. Because you can see the lawyer and the gears in his head turning and nodding and agreeing along with all of the racial stuff. And you can see him kind of being like, yeah, okay, that's what I'm saying, yeah. So it's very clear that that was one of the bullet points that the lawyer told them to hit home over. And another one was the Coast Guard. Why would I call the Coast Guard if I knew he was dead? I called the Coast Guard right away. First off, you didn't. You waited till 11 o'clock. Second, it's not like the Coast Guard searched for him that night. Warren clung to that like it was a safety raft.
I think from the beginning, I'm glad that I called the Coast Guard. It would have been completely different. I'm glad I called the Coast Guard.
It's like, I'm sorry, Warren, but it's actually way more suspicious that you called the Coast Guard. Because first, you didn't want to call the Coast Guard when you guys were sinking. And then for some reason, you assumed that Nolan was still out on the island at 11 o'clock at night. Why wouldn't you assume that he came back with the person he was supposed to come back with and something happened to him in transit? Because no reasonable person would think that he was still out on the island, in my opinion. Because in your own words, Warren, you said you didn't talk to Katie till the next day. And then speaking of the island, the lawyer tries to say that by them going to the island and looking around, that it absolutely exonerates them and that the narrative couldn't be this, and ends it with a wild statement, mind you.
People who have been sucking up way more oxygen than they're entitled to have not been to the island. I'm willing to bet that a lot of the hustlers and profiteers and liars have not been to that island. And you have to go to that island. And being at the island today was revelatory. It was really illuminating. It's a very dynamic marine environment, first of all. But when you go to the island, you see instantly that what some people want to be true, what they wish to be true, they're trying to wish it to be true. They're trying to make it true through their lies. It's actually not possible. It is a very, very long and narrow barrier island. It's basically very low sand dunes. And the particular part of the island that we're dealing with, there are no trees. It's hardly any foliage, hardly any tree cover, hardly any plants, and it's wide open. And on July 4th, there were thousands of people there. There is no possible way that anybody could have committed a murder in broad daylight.
Murder? Who's saying anything about a murder? Most of us are under the assumption that an accident happened and they covered it up. All of this stuff that they keep trying to point to as evidence that they didn't do anything to him are not actually evidence. You know what is evidence? The security cam footage. Explain to us why the grandfather was the one who canceled the sea tow. How about that? And what I see is just a complete lack of responsibility with these boys. Because listen to this phrasing.
I wish we would have never, I think about this every day. I wish we would have never went out on the 4th of July because I know this wouldn't have happened.
You see, instead of saying, I should have made sure my friend got home safely, they said, I wish we had never gone out. And I have to admit, my little antennas buzzed a little when it sounded like he was going to say, I knew this was going to happen, right? That seems like what he was going to say. It wasn't, maybe we shouldn't have been underage drinking. They literally say, we did everything right.
I mean, there's not much I would change from my point of view and my friend's point of view. I think we did everything right, and I know we did nothing wrong.
Those are not the words of somebody who lost their brother, their best friend, a month ago. And I lost one of my closest friends in a non-suspicious way. I blamed myself, even though I hadn't even physically seen her in a couple years. And for those of you guys saying that Jax is the one that people should press, I fully disagree. He is the one that I think is the scariest out of these interviews. Watch the way he looks at Warren during this moment.
We live in a very tight-knit community, and for people to, push back and say these things when they know what Ocean Springs is like, it's really hard. And I mean, I don't think I haven't had many personal encounters, but I know being around the
Oh, he felt like he was saying something to Warren. Because let's not forget, it was his grandparents' house that they all got together at. It was his grandparents' house that they went back to and thus should have security cam footage from. And out of all of them, Jax is the one that is holding his body in a different way, who is more controlled, more level-headed. If these kids were truly looking to exonerate themselves, they would actually start addressing some of these questions, like, who was the fourth boat? Why were all of you huddled up out there together? Who drove the fucking Palm Beach? All right, let's try recording this video for the third time. First off, what in the cosplay was this lawyer doing? As if he isn't a lawyer from New York. He's just throwing on some good old boy dog whistle clothes. What I've seen so far, this was a weird interview. From the baseball signals he was giving, watching these boys as if he was their warden, and wearing a hat advertising the law firm that you're working with is weird. But this lawyer kind of proved my point a little bit when I suspected that he wasn't going to be a very good lawyer and just was actually a bully behind the scenes. Because did y'all pick up on this?
About Morgan, Jax, and Warren, I'm not going to call them untruths or half-truths or falsehoods. I'm going to call it what it is, lies. Morgan, Warren, and Jax left the island at about 4:30 p.m. That's it.
Yeah, did anybody else pick up on him constantly repeating Morgan, Jax, and Warren? Morgan, Jax, and Warren are innocent. Morgan, Jax, and Warren left at 4:30. That language is intentional. He's intentionally excluding all the other people on the boat, all the other people that went to the beach. And you might notice he conveniently left out the brother in all of this. Aren't you also representing his brother? And yet you intentionally say stuff like this.
Morgan, if you lied about Jax, if you lied about Warren, we're going to get you. And you're going to be hauled into court. You're going to be held accountable. And it's going to be very painful. And what I would say to the people who have done that is, now's your chance. If you want to apologize and retract before you find yourself in court, you should probably do that now. Because if you don't do that, once you're in court, now you just can't leave. You won't be able to get out of it. And we're not going to name names because there's some other folks who are doing that, and we want to be better than that. And I want to emphasize this, right? We're not here to guess. We're not here to speculate. We're only going to deal in facts, right? And here's the most important thing, right? We don't know how Nolan Wells died. No one here is saying we know. But what we do know is Morgan, Jax, and Warren had nothing whatsoever to do with Nolan Wells' death.
Did you see it? Did you see how they intentionally left out so many people? And I thought he drowned. It was an accident, right? Isn't it weird how in none of these interviews they're ever like, this was an awful accident. We should have made better choices that day and looked out for our friend, but in the end, he drowned. And can we just talk for a second about the weird laugh they did there? Let's show it again.
If you don't do that, once you're in court, now you just can't leave. You won't be able to get out of it.
What the hell was so funny about that? That was the mask slipping, y'all. That's how they really feel about all of this. There's no logical reason a lawyer would actually advise any of their clients to go and keep doing these interviews, because this is all just a media PR stunt. They know that they're never going to be held accountable, but they are just so worried about their name being Googleable that they're desperately trying to send up the signal to try and revamp their public image. This whole interview, in my opinion, is just the lawyer doing what I thought he would try to do and bully and intimidate people into silence. Because as someone who has gotten several cease and desists in my life, they don't give you warnings. They don't tell you, oh, you better retract it or else we're gonna then get you to court. No, a cease and desist is your warning. A warning that means nothing. Personally, I don't think there's gonna be a single person that they ever bring to court for defamation. And if anything, this lawyer repeating over and over just Morgan, Jax, and Warren implies that what he's actually saying in lawyer speak is that these are the only 3 with clean hands, which is why, again, it is so weird that his brother is not included in this list. I've got a lot more to say about this interview, so I'll be making another video today for sure. But one thing I need to say is if you really want to keep coming on here and proclaiming your innocence, why don't you actually show us the evidence that you claim that you have? Show us the text messages with Katie. Jack's buddy, go ahead and show us that security cam footage of all y'all coming home. Feels like that would be the most definitive way to shut us up now, wouldn't it? Until you do that, nobody feels bad that you can't buy a fucking Gatorade. Nolan is dead. My bad, folks. I've got to re-upload the video because I accidentally left something in it, so I had to re-edit it. But here we go. Let's try it again. This was the most bizarre good old boy cosplay I have ever seen in my life. Let's keep in mind that that Trump lawyer that they hired is from New York, and I have never seen a lawyer sit down with their clients and do an interview with them in the least professional attire I have ever seen, while also advertising another law firm on their hat. We all saw how weird this interview was, right? It was like a prison warden keeping checks on them. And not only was he doing the weird baseball signals throughout the interview, not only was he in the most defensive position out of anybody in this group, after I watched this interview, he kind of proved me right in that I think he's a bad lawyer who's using bullying tactics behind the scene, and that's what he's good at. Because did anybody else pick up on this?
About Morgan, Jax, and Warren, I'm not going to call them untruths or half-truths or falsehoods. I'm going to call it what it is, lies. Morgan, Warren, and Jax left the island at about 4:30 p.m. That's it.
Did anybody else pick up on that? That over and over again, he was specifically saying Morgan, Jax, and Warren, blah, blah, blah. They didn't do anything. They left the island at 4:30. If you're telling lies about them, you're in trouble. He's intentionally and purposely omitting everybody else that was on the boat, everybody else that was in the group that day. And that right there is very telling to me. Now, I personally do not see the logic in the lawyer advising these boys to do another interview, unless it's to try and threaten and intimidate the people that they're gonna go after for defamation. Because they keep saying this over and over again. We're gonna sue for defamation. We're gonna bring these people in and we're gonna sue them. And at one point, the lawyer even says this.
Morgan, if you lied about Jax, if you lied about Warren, we're going to get you. And you're going to be hauled into court. You're going to be held accountable. And it's going to be very painful. And what I would say to the people who have done that is, now's your chance. If you want to apologize and retract before you find yourself in court, you should probably do that now. Because if you don't do that, once you're in court, now you just can't leave. You won't be able to get out of it. And we're not going to name names because there's some other folks who are doing that, and we want to be better than that. And I want to emphasize this, right? We're not here to guess. We're not here to speculate. We're only going to deal in facts, right? And here's the most important thing, right? We don't know how Nolan Wells died. No one here is saying we know. But what we do know is Morgan, Jax, and Warren had nothing whatsoever to do with Nolan Wells' death.
Once again, being overly specific and giving away the game. Oh, if you lie about Morgan and Jax and Warren, we're gonna haul you into court. We don't know anything, but Morgan, Jax, and Warren are innocent. But I thought he drowned. Aren't they all innocent? Isn't it all just a terrible accident? Notice how not once has anybody in any of these interviews said that this was just a tragic accident. And mind you, if they were actually being defamed, those letters would have been sent out. They wouldn't go and give an interview warning people, you better retract it or then we're gonna come for you. As someone who has had several cease and desist letters sent to them, they don't warn you. Because cease and desist letters in themselves don't matter. They aren't anything. They are the warning. What was that weird fucking laugh they all had together?
Once you're in court, now you just can't leave. You won't be able to get out of it.
That was the mask slipping. That was them showing us who they really are. I've got got a ton more I want to say about this interview so far, but I think it's important that we need to keep the pressure on, because look at Warren is crumbling. He's literally wearing the same shirt that he wore in the last interview when they went to the island, and just look at the difference. Personally, I think it's important that if we are going to be giving Officer Tatum the views on these videos, that we need to be expressing our opinions in the comment section, not fighting with people. And I can't help but wonder why Warren's brother was left out of all of those proclamations. Just something to think about.
Take a deep breath. What you just watched was not a simple reaction video. It was a careful line-by-line breakdown. While attorney Edward Pulsick was busy acting like a tough guy from a movie, quoting gangster lines and laughing at the thought of going to court, independent researchers were doing something that truly threatens the official story. They were looking at the tiny details. They looked at the deck of the Triton. They looked at the sand on Horn Island. They looked at the wrists of the boys in the background. And when they brightened up those dark pictures, the tidy story told about July 4th fell to pieces. Let us go through the 5 major clues you just saw and match them to the physical facts of this case. Because digital pictures are just puzzle pieces until you set them against the clock, and once you do, the official timeline completely breaks. The first clue is the most important because it questions the entire reason for the emergency call. When the Sea Tow dispatcher answered the radio call from the Triton, she was told the bilge pump stopped working and the boat was going under. In the news interviews, the boys talked about how crazy it was, but they made sure to repeat one key detail. Nobody was lying down, and nobody was crawling across the deck floor. Yet physics does not care what an attorney wants you to say. When you slow down the video of the boat getting yanked by the tow line, you see a sharp, hard bounce. The boat jerks, the water splashes, and in that exact split second, a hand or a foot shoots straight up from the floorboards. Someone was down there. If the boat was filling up with water and someone was on the floor, they were either trying to scoop out water or they were hurt and unable to get up. There is no other choice. You do not lie flat on the floor of a 22-foot boat that's sinking out in the Gulf of Mexico unless you're working to save it, or you cannot stand on your feet. Look at the faces of the boys during the interview when this exact topic comes up. As the creator pointed out, Warren stops breathing completely. He goes stiff, his eyes look off to the side at someone in the room, and he does not move a muscle until the sentence is finished. That is not how an upset friend acts when talking about boat trouble. That is how a person acts when they realize a piece of video proof just ruined their story. The clip was taken down from the internet soon after, but the internet never forgets. Slowing that video down frame by frame proves the official story of what happened on the Triton is simply impossible. This leads us right to the second clue. If someone was lying on the deck of the Triton, we have to ask who else was on the water that day and where they were when it got dark outside. One of the main parts of their story is that Nolan decided to stay behind on Horn Island to talk to Katie. The friends claimed they left him on the sand, guessing he would just get a boat ride back with her group later on. But when the online sleuth checked the Snapchat photo Katie posted that day and brightened up the dark areas, the background revealed a totally different picture. Deep in the background of that picture, standing on the sand, is a person wearing red shorts with light hair and a familiar shape. Why does that matter? Because earlier that day, a fight broke out on the sand at Horn Island. By Warren Hudson's own words, his 17-year-old brother Carter was in that fight. Carter trains in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and Warren admitted that Carter put someone in an armbar on the beach. An armbar is a specific wrestling move where a person traps and pulls back on an arm, requiring a very clear hold around the upper body. Now look at the independent autopsy findings. Look at the red mark on the back of Nolan's head and compare it to the position of the arms in the sharpened image of the person in the red shorts. Nobody is saying this picture alone proves a crime. A blurry, dark photo is not a final answer, but it is a big clue that raises a very serious question. If Carter was on the beach wearing red shorts and Warren brought his little brother over to the Triton to calm down while the boat was allegedly sinking, was Carter on the Triton leaving at 4:30 p.m., but the person in the red shorts is also seen on Katie's boat in a photo taken at 6 p.m.? The timeline falls apart. You cannot ride away on a boat at 4:30 p.m. and still be on the island at 6 p.m. People cannot be in two places at once. And if the timeline does not work, we have to look at the other boats and who was steering them. That brings us to our third clue, the jewelry. Throughout this case, there has always been a question about a fourth boat. The main story mentions the Triton, Katie's boat, and a boat owned by Bart Jr. The boys said they called Bart that morning to meet up on the water, but as the creator noted, that makes little sense, because what 21-year-old does not have plans on July 4th? When looking through older photos of Bart Jr. to spot a tattoo on the person in the video, the researcher spotted something far more clear, a bracelet. It is a very distinct set of bands on the wrist. When you compare that bracelet to the person in the background of the boat clip, the one with the mullet who looks like he's wearing jeans on the beach, the match is unmistakable. Here's the catch. That person is not on Bart's boat. The seats and layout do not match Bart's boat at all. So if Bart Jr. was riding on a completely different vessel, who was driving Bart's boat? The sleuth looked at the family photos and found the answer. Bart has a younger brother. They look very much alike, but the brother has a distinct square jaw that matches the person steering the Triton in the footage. His name is Brooks. That name came up before when one of the boys casually mentioned their buddy Brooks in an earlier clip, only for that name to be pushed aside. If Brooks was driving Bart's boat while Bart Jr. was somewhere else, the entire map of July 4th changes. These boats were not acting alone. People were jumping from boat to boat and traveling together like a small fleet. The clean story of three separate groups doing their own thing is just not true. That leads directly to the fourth clue. When you have multiple boats, a missing teenager, and a broken timeline, you bring in a lawyer to control what the public hears. When Edward Pulsick sat next to Morgan, Jax, and Warren, he did not act like an ordinary defense lawyer. He acted like a guard keeping watch over them. He wore a simple baseball hat with his firm's name and gave out warnings. But the most telling part was not what he said, it was what he left out. Over and over again, the lawyer repeated just three names: Morgan, Jax, and Warren. He said if you lie about Morgan, Jax, and Warren, they'll take you to court. He said Morgan, Jax, and Warren left at 4:30 p.m. He said Morgan, Jax, and Warren had nothing to do with what happened to Nolan. In the law, choosing specific words is done on purpose. When a lawyer names only three people, he is drawing a circle around them. He is telling everyone that only those three are being protected. Look at who is left outside that circle. The other people on the boats, the extra vessel, and most noticeably, Warren's brother Carter. If the lawyer is helping the group, why is Carter left out of every statement of innocence? Why is the brother, who allegedly got into a physical fight on the sand, not included under that legal protection? A lawyer who protects only 3 specific names is showing you that everyone else is on their own. Then came the threat about how once you get to court, you cannot leave, followed by that group laugh. That quick laugh was the real truth showing through. It was the sound of young men relying on a big city lawyer laughing off serious questions. Real legal warnings do not happen on television shows. Real cease and desist letters arrive quietly in the mail. When a lawyer goes on camera to tell the public to be quiet, he is not building a real legal case. He is trying to scare people. If they had real proof that cleared their names, they wouldn't need to make threats. They would just show the video. This brings us to the 5th and most critical clue: the home security cameras. The grandparents of Jax own the home in Ocean Springs where everyone met before going out on the water, and it's the same house they went back to after leaving Horn Island. That house has security cameras outside. Those camera recordings would show the exact minute the boats arrived. They would show who walked through the front door. They would show how the boys looked when they got home. And they would show whether Nolan's phone and keys were sitting in that house hours before anyone called his family. Yet that video has never been shared. Instead, the public gets long speeches about race. We're told asking questions is an attack on their character. We're told the news is twisting things. We're told one of the boys had a hard time buying a drink at a store, and we are asked to feel sorry for them. Nobody feels sorry that someone had a hard time buying a drink. Nolan Wells is dead. If these boys did nothing wrong, that house camera footage would instantly clear them. It is the single piece of proof that could show they came home alone and did nothing to his things. In the law, choosing specific words is done on purpose. When a lawyer names only 3 people, he is drawing a circle around them. He is telling everyone that only those 3 are being protected. Look at who is left outside that circle: the other people on the boats, the extra vessel, and most noticeably, Warren's brother Carter. If the lawyer is helping the group, why is Carter left out of every statement of innocence? Why is the brother who allegedly got into a physical fight on the sand not included under that legal protection? A lawyer who protects only 3 specific names is showing you that everyone else is on their own. Then came the threat about how once you get to court, you cannot leave, followed by that group laugh. That quick laugh was the real truth showing through. It was the sound of young men relying on a big city lawyer, laughing off serious questions. Real legal warnings do not happen on television shows. Real cease and desist letters arrive quietly in the mail. When a lawyer goes on camera to tell the public to be quiet, he is not building a real legal case. He is trying to scare people. If they had real proof that cleared their names, they wouldn't need to make threats. They would just show the video. This brings us to the 5th and most critical clue: the home security cameras. The grandparents of Jax own the home in Ocean Springs where everyone met before going out on the water, and it's the same house they went back to after leaving Horn Island. That house has security cameras outside. Those camera recordings would show the exact minute the boats arrived. They would show who walked through the front door. They would show how the boys looked when they got home, and they would show whether Nolan's phone and keys were sitting in that house hours before anyone called his family. Yet that video has never been shared. Instead, the public gets long speeches about race. We are told asking questions is an attack on their character. We are told the news is twisting things. We are told one of the boys had a hard time buying a drink at a store, and we are asked to feel sorry for them. Nobody feels sorry that someone had a hard time buying a drink. Nolan Wells is dead. If these boys did nothing wrong, that house camera footage would instantly clear them. It's the single piece of proof that could show they came home alone and did nothing to his things.